Hi guys, so American Psycho book review. Um, this is like a lot of my own personal opinion and what I took away from American Psycho as just like your regular reader. And I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of what I'm doing in my English class right now, which is like we're exploring what it means to be American, the American identity, and also kind of like the human condition, things like that. And I think it's like a good reading exercise for me, but also because I feel like Bret Easton Ellis is such a controversial figure. I looked him up just now, and apparently he's like a racist, like misogynist or something. And that definitely makes the writing a little more confusing because is this supposed to be like satire, which I thought it was. I thought it was supposed to be satire and kind of like social commentary. But apparently some people don't feel that way. They feel like this is a reflection of like his thoughts and what he believes. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about what other people think. I'm just here to give you my take on American Psycho. And as I was reading, for some reason, like the reading experience kind of gave me the same feeling as Catskills by Kurt Vonnegut. And because the whole thing kind of felt like a fever dream, the same way like Catskills kind of felt like a fever dream as well. And I feel like the two books do like social commentary in a similar way, where they like put you through the perspective of this like character, and they're both critiquing something about our society. But then again, lots of books do that. Maybe I'm just not that well read. So I have like a list on the side of like things I want to touch on, and I want to like just bring up some interesting things that I'm not going to go that in depth into. So like for example, there's the portrayal of like violence in the United States, and what I find interesting, especially during this point in time, is like the failure of the American police to prosecute the privileged class, because it's undeniable that the character Patrick Bateman is from the privileged class. And then we're taken, to the present day, and we see what's going on after Luigi Mangione shot the United Healthcare CEO, and how lots of Americans are like frustrated about how these large like conglomerates, these corporations are able to take advantage of and like exploit the American people, but they don't get in trouble for it because it's technically legal, since they're like these big corporations and they're able to like hurt so many people. But you have someone who's like directly committing the murder in broad daylight, and then they have like the perp walk and things like that. And so it's kind of different though, because Patrick Bateman does like straight up kill people, and he does it in like really grotesque and violent way. And that's another point of contention. Like, is he actually like, did he actually kill these people, or is this some kind of like sick fantasy he's going through? But here's my thing. Spoiler alert, at the very beginning, he like stabs out a homeless person's eye, and near the end of the book we see the same homeless person again, and his eye is gone. His like dog recognizes him. So I like genuinely believe that he's like committing the violence to, at least like a certain extent, and it's not just psychotic fantasies. And so that brings up the really interesting point of how like the police in the book, like, he never gets in trouble for it. He even talks with a detective about I believe like Paul Owen's like disappearance. And another interesting thing about that is apparently maybe he never even killed Paul Owens, because people are so sure that they saw him in London. But then there's the other thing, like these people don't even like recognize each other. So definitely many interesting parts, many layers to dive into, which is why I'm only trying to briefly touch on that so I can get to the parts that I want to talk about. Alright, so there's that, the failure of American police to prosecute the privileged class, and then the portrayal of sex in the American media or US media, because I feel like this country was founded on very conservative and Christian ideals. Like, the way that this book is very graphic and like descriptive in his sexual pursuits, that at first it's like very jarring, and as like the violence gets mixed into it, and there's also like queerness being mixed, it's like very, it's, first of all, this is not a digestible read. And then there's also like how sex work is portrayed, and then like the violence and like the dangerous like nature of it. I feel like I'm not being very articulate right now, but I just want to say that it's definitely something to keep in mind if you ever plan to read it. This book is not for those with weak stomachs. And also how it's another way to look into how it's representing that the true like American identity really only goes to the people that have privilege, and to the point where the women are so easily exploited that he doesn't really see them as human. They're kind of treated the same way as livestock and objects for his fantasies and for his like exploits. So how does this relate to the American identity, the perspective, the framework which I'm trying to look at this book through? Which is, you're kind of seeing how only a certain demographic he's describing are being treated as like Americans, and those are like the rich white people, and barely even the women, because the way he treats Evelyn, his fiance for majority of the novel, and also just like the other women in these social circles, like they're called hard bodies, objectified and defined by their physical traits. So over consumerism, I feel like this is also a really relevant topic. That's a big problem that people are pointing out now. After like COVID, there was this large influx of TikTokers who would do like large shopping hauls, and then now like people are starting to call them out on over consumerism, and you know, we're kind of waking up to the reality of how like large companies are trying to take advantage of like consumers by pushing on these like micro trends to get us to buy more things and just to keep shopping and shopping is like fast fashion. Anyways, fast fashion perpetuating these like shopping hauls and this culture of just buying and buying and buying, which is over consumerism. Anyways, where do I see over consumerism in American Psycho? Lots of lists up here, and this is just a favorite of like, I don't know if this is like Ellis's choice, like his style as a writer, or if this is like a characterization choice, like some way to, you know, make Bateman to seem like a really superficial character. But then you see the way the other characters talk, and they all talk about like fashion and like what they're wearing, like the technology they own. So I suppose it's to just highlight this like culture of consumerism, and just this like shallowness that goes with defining the people you see by like what kind of designer clothing they're wearing, if they're wearing designer at all, and it's just looking down on the people that aren't able to afford this sort of lifestyle, you know, to the point where he doesn't really like view them as human at all or worthwhile people. And so this brings me to what I was trying to talk about. The main point I'm trying to take away, like if I were to write an essay on this using the framework of American identity and who's an American and some like authorial intent, then I would definitely write about how anyone who isn't white in the novel isn't treated like as an American, which is, I'm not sure if, oh, I'm such a genius and I'm the first person to thought about this, like that's definitely not the case. But I also haven't looked at any other like reviews or any other like analytical pieces on American Psycho, because I want to go into this with my own thoughts and not, as they say, taint my ideas with outside influence. So, for example, the Chinese dry cleaners. I have this sticky noted. So, the thing about how people who aren't white, from the perspective of Bateman, is that, if you're not white, you're technically not American. And they all fall into their own, section of, foreign. And so, the taxi drivers, when they're not white, he, just looks at them, he, guesses their ethnicity, and he's like, oh, this probably an Iranian, or oh, these Chinese dry cleaners, and it never crosses the mind of Bateman that this is a Chinese American, or even this person, even if they've immigrated and they're maybe they're an American now, it's not looked at that way. And this idea of an American being a white person is still very prevalent. And when I kind of had this revelation, it reminded me of this video I watched, which is by John M. True, and he's the director of Wicked, which is going it's just really popular right now. It's in theaters. He also directed Crazy Rich Asians, In the Heights, some other movies. And John M. True, when he was attending USC, he won the Princess Grace Award, short film thing for this movie, or I guess short film, called Silent Beats. And I think it's just so interesting because when I first watched it, I was like, okay, I see the microaggressions that the boy is facing, and the ideas that he perpetuates onto the old lady, that she's senile and weak and fragile and elderly. But then what about the Asian man? They just show a temple and a rice farmer hat. I don't understand, where's the microaggression? This night I just suddenly realized oh my gosh, wow, I'm part of the problem. It just never occurred to me that, hey, maybe this man is American. I just immediately identified him as foreign because he's not white, or he doesn't look like what you would expect an American to be like. And so the same thing's happening in here. I don't know if it's intentional. If it's intentional, then I think that's pretty genius. Kudos to you, Bret Easton Ellis, for that. That was good. And then if it's not, yeah, I think that would be a different kind of conversation. But have you guys ever thought about that? Just the idea of you see a non-white person, and then the first thing that comes to mind is oh, they're a foreigner, or oh, their family hasn't been here for the last 5 generations. And I mean, the reality is that is the case for most people, but just the immediate assumption that they don't speak English well, or that they're not real Americans. Mind blown. For me anyways. Okay, so if you guys haven't watched Silent Beats before, very good film. I think it was really good, lots of twists, and I think it's really insightful for something that's only 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So if you have 5 minutes and 40 seconds to spare, I recommend watching that. So that's kind of my ramble. I feel that was a really bad book review. Maybe I'll do better ones in the future. Now, for the actual booktuber book review, let's see, what do they usually talk about? Okay, I wrote a mini paragraph about what I wanted to say. The overall commentary about American society is very clever. If he meant to be clever, then good job. If he's actually a racist, misogynist, bigot, then I don't know why this book would be popular then. And I think it's a bit of a brain teaser, because when you first start it, you're like, what am I reading? This is violent, and it's ugh. It's not as they described. It's not satirical and hilarious and ambitious. It's disgusting. And then you sort of read, and you're like, wait, why am I thinking so deep? It's not that deep. Like this is, it's really shallow. And it's like empty. And like lots of people don't have self-awareness. Should you read American Psycho? If you want to read American Psycho just for the sake of saying like, oh, I read American Psycho, yeah, I'm so well read, then I mean go ahead. Like I don't think this is for everyone. There are definitely more books out there that can like touch on the same topics in a less like violent and grotesque way. But yeah, like if you have a weak stomach, like don't do it. If you guys like skipped around to the middle of like that really long video I recorded myself reading, like finishing the rest of American Psycho in, I'm so disgusted. Like you can see my double chin. I'm like the like majority of the time, because honestly some parts of it is just so vile, but that's also part of what makes this, you know, so fun, because it's not that serious, guys. All right, that's kind of it. I wish I did something more in depth. Maybe I should have like pulled out a 5-part series full of like research and like going into like each of the social issues that I picked up on when I was reading. But honestly, I don't have the time for that. I do have lots of studying to do, and I would like to dive deeper, but I don't know if you guys would want to watch me like yap away about like what I think about how sex work is like in the United States. So I don't know, maybe you guys do. I mean, if you guys do, like, let me know. I'll do it. But that's what I think. Now, did you guys like this? Was this fun? Was this interesting? Was this kind of like a brain teaser? Something to think about? Because if yes, then I'll read more. Drop some suggestions down in the comments. I want to read, have like a long list of books I need to read. Let me just reach over to my bookshelf really fast. Have like a long list of things I should get to. I have the books I never got to reading, so Crime and Punishment, that's an option. Third Nights. I read The Secret History and I low-key loved it, so I got another one of Donna Tartt's books, which is The Goldfinch. Maybe I'll read this one. No, interesting fun fact, if you guys didn't know this, but to my knowledge, Donna Tartt and Bret Easton Ellis were actually like college classmates. That's kind of interesting, right? Both wrote some iconic pieces of American literature. American Psycho, The Secret History. Though I would say The Secret History isn't as mainstream as American Psycho, in my personal opinion. So, these are the options for now. Thank you guys. I hope this this kind of like yapping book review didn't make you feel like you wanted to unsubscribe, because I swear I can make worthwhile content, but I just had so many thoughts about this and I didn't want to like never make the video, because sometimes if I put something off for too long, it just dies in the back of my to-do list. So that was that. Maybe I'll actually write like a short analysis on it and like do a better book review down the road. But here's my first book review. I hoped you liked it. I hoped I offered some interesting commentary.